Sarah Mitchell never imagined that a desperate text meant for her babysitter would reach the most dangerous man in Chicago. When her 5-year-old daughter Emma spiked a fever at midnight, Sarah's trembling fingers sent, "Please, I need help. Emma's burning up and I can't leave work," to the wrong number. Across the city, Vincent Caruso, the feared head of the Caruso crime family, was in the middle of a high-stakes negotiation when his phone lit up. He read the message twice, then stood abruptly, silencing the room. "This meeting is over," he said, his voice cold as steel. What no one knew was that the number Sarah texted belonged to his late wife's old phone, a line he'd kept active for 3 years, unable to let go. And now, a stranger's plea had awakened something he thought died with her. If you're listening to this story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what part of the world you're listening from. Chicago's South Side wore November like a worn coat, gray, damp, and unforgiving. The wind off Lake Michigan cut through the streets with surgical precision, carrying the scent of rain-soaked asphalt and the distant promise of snow. Sarah Mitchell pulled her thin jacket tighter as she hurried through the service entrance of Mercy General Hospital, her sneakers squeaking against the linoleum floors that never quite dried. The overnight shift in the hospital's laundry department wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Barely. Sarah had been folding surgical gowns for 6 hours straight, her hands raw from industrial detergent, her back aching from the repetitive motion. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow that made the basement feel like a separate world, one where time moved differently, where the rest of Chicago's problems couldn't quite reach. Her phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m. Emma's name lit up the screen, but it was Mrs. Chen's voice on the other end, tight with worry. "Sarah? Emma's running a fever. It came on fast, 103.2. She's asking for you." Sarah's stomach dropped. She pressed her palm against the industrial washing machine beside her, steadying herself against the wave of panic that threatened to knock her sideways. Emma, her 5-year-old daughter with the gap-toothed smile and the collection of stuffed rabbits she insisted on naming after presidents. Emma, who'd already been through too much in her short life, a father who'd walked out before she was born, an apartment with heat that worked only when it felt like it, a mother who worked 2 jobs and still couldn't afford the good health insurance. "I'm calling Dr. Patel," Mrs. Chen continued. "But Sarah, if this gets worse, I'll be there. I'm leaving now." Sarah ended the call and immediately typed a message to Jessica, her usual backup babysitter. "Please, I need help. Emma's burning up, and I can't leave work." Her fingers were shaking so badly she barely registered the contact name before hitting send. She grabbed her coat and rushed to find her supervisor, Mr. Kowalski, a man whose sympathy had worn thin after the 3rd emergency this month. "Family emergency," she said, not waiting for permission. "My daughter's sick. Mitchell, you've got 4 hours left on your shift. Fire me if you want. I'm going." She didn't wait for his response. The elevator ride up from the basement felt interminable, each floor ticking by with agonizing slowness. When she finally burst through the hospital's main entrance, the November wind hit her like a physical blow, but she barely noticed. The bus stop was 3 blocks away. She ran. Across the city, in a private room above Salvatore's, an Italian restaurant in River North that served as a front for the Caruso family's legitimate business operations, Vincent Caruso sat at the head of a mahogany table, his expression unreadable. The room smelled of cigar smoke and expensive cologne. 6 men in tailored suits sat around the table, their faces hard, their postures careful. They were discussing territory, specifically the 3 blocks of Wicker Park that the Moretti family had been encroaching on for the past 6 months. It was a conversation that required precision, the kind of negotiation where one wrong word could spark a war that would paint the streets red. Vincent listened more than he spoke. At 42, he'd learned that silence was often more powerful than threats. His dark hair, touched with gray at the temples, was pulled back into a neat knot at the nape of his neck, a style that would have looked affected on anyone else, but on him seemed perfectly natural, almost regal. He wore a charcoal suit with a subtle pinstripe, the jacket tailored to accommodate the shoulder holster he never went without. A gold pocket watch chain glinted at his hip, the watch itself a family heirloom that had belonged to his grandfather. "The Morettis think we're weak," said Tony Greco, Vincent's underboss, a bull of a man with scarred knuckles and a voice like gravel. "They think because we didn't retaliate after the warehouse incident. They think wrong," Vincent said quietly. His voice had a quality that made people lean in to hear it, a softness that was somehow more menacing than shouting. But we don't move until we know exactly who gave the order. I want names, Tony, not assumptions. His phone buzzed on the table. Vincent glanced at it. A reflex, nothing more. He never answered during meetings. But the number on the screen made his breath catch in his throat. It was Lucia's number, his wife's number, the line he'd kept active for 3 years, unable to bring himself to cancel it, paying the bill every month like a tithe to a ghost. The message preview showed on his screen. Please, I need help. Emma's burning up, and I can't leave work. The room continued talking, but Vincent heard none of it. His hand moved to the phone, unlocking it, reading the full message. Emma, a child. Someone was asking Lucia for help, not knowing that Lucia had been dead for 3 years, killed in a car accident that Vincent still saw every time he closed his eyes. Boss? Tony's voice cut through the fog. You with us? Vincent stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Every eye in the room turned to him. This meeting is over, he said, his tone brooking no argument. Tony, finish the discussion. I want a report by morning. Vincent, we're in the middle of... I said it's over. He was out the door before anyone could respond, his phone already in his hand. He stared at the message again, his mind racing. Wrong number. It had to be. But the desperation in those words, please, I need help, struck something deep in his chest, something he thought had calcified into scar tissue. Vincent descended the stairs to the restaurant's main floor, where the dinner crowd was thinning out. His driver, Marcus, a former Marine with a face like weathered stone, stood immediately from his position near the door. We're leaving, Vincent said. I need you to trace a number. Sir? Vincent showed him the phone. Find out who this is. Name, address, everything. I want it in 10 minutes. Marcus nodded and pulled out his own phone, making a call to the family's tech specialist. Vincent walked to the restaurant's window, staring out at the Chicago night. Rain had started to fall, turning the streets into rivers of reflected neon and headlights. A child named Emma was sick, a mother was desperate, and somehow, impossibly, they'd reached out to the one number Vincent Caruso couldn't ignore. He thought of Lucia, her laugh, the way she'd insisted on keeping fresh flowers in every room, her absolute certainty that there was good in the world, even when Vincent showed her evidence to the contrary every single day. She'd wanted children. They'd been trying when she died. Got it, Marcus said, returning with his phone. Sarah Mitchell, 28, lives in Pilsen, works at Mercy General, laundry department. Single mother, 1 daughter, Emma, age 5. No criminal record. Looks like she meant to text someone named Jessica but hit the wrong contact. Vincent took the information, memorizing the address. Get the car. Boss, what are we doing? We're going to Pilsen. Marcus knew better than to argue. Within minutes, Vincent was in the back of his black Mercedes, watching the city slide past the tinted windows. The rain came down harder now, drumming against the roof like fingertips. Vincent pulled out his phone and typed a response to Sarah's message. What's your address? I'm coming to help. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. This was insane. He was the head of one of Chicago's most powerful crime families, and he was about to show up at a stranger's apartment because of a misdirected text message. But something in those words, I need help, had cracked open a door he'd kept locked for 3 years. The phone buzzed with a response. Who is this? I think I texted the wrong number. I'm so sorry. Vincent typed back. You did, but I'm still coming. Send me your address. Your daughter needs help. A long pause. Then, 1247 W, 18th Street, apartment 3B. But I don't understand. You will. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Vincent leaned back in his seat, watching the rain-slicked streets of Chicago rush past. Somewhere in this city, a woman named Sarah Mitchell was probably terrified, wondering what kind of stranger was about to show up at her door in the middle of the night. He'd find out soon enough if this was a mistake. But as the car turned south toward Pilsen, Vincent felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 years. Purpose. A child was sick. A mother was desperate. And for reasons he couldn't fully articulate, Vincent Caruso had just made them his priority. The gold pocket watch at his hip felt heavier than usual, as if Lucia herself was weighing in on his decision. He touched it briefly, a gesture that had become habit, and whispered to the ghost that rode with him everywhere, I hope I'm doing the right thing. The rain answered with thunder, and the Mercedes drove on into the night. Sarah stood in the narrow hallway of her apartment building, her daughter cradled against her chest, and tried to make sense of the last 20 minutes of her life. Emma's fever had climbed to 103.8 by the time Sarah burst through Mrs. Chen's door, and the elderly woman had pressed a cool cloth into Sarah's hands with the kind of calm that comes from raising 6 children of her own. "The medicine will work," Mrs. Chen had said, her accent thick, but her certainty absolute. "But if it doesn't break in an hour, you take her to emergency." Now, Sarah was back in her own apartment, a cramped 2-bedroom with water stains on the ceiling, and a radiator that clanked like it was harboring ghosts, trying to process the text messages on her phone. A stranger, a man who'd received her desperate plea by mistake and was now, apparently, on his way to help her. It was insane. It was potentially dangerous. Sarah should have told him not to come, should have blocked the number and pretended the whole thing never happened. But something in his messages had been different, not predatory, not mocking, just direct, almost businesslike, as if helping a stranger's sick child at midnight was a perfectly reasonable thing to do. Emma stirred in her arms, her small face flushed with fever, her breathing shallow. Sarah carried her to the couch and laid her down gently, tucking her favorite blanket, a threadbare thing with faded rabbits, around her small body. President Lincoln, a stuffed bunny with one ear, was clutched in Emma's fist. "Mama," Emma whispered, her voice hoarse. "My throat hurts." "I know, baby. The medicine will help soon." Sarah brushed damp hair from Emma's forehead, her own heart hammering. The pediatrician's office wouldn't open for another 8 hours. The emergency room would mean a bill she couldn't pay, another debt added to the pile that already threatened to bury them. A knock at the door made Sarah jump. She checked her phone. 11:58 p.m. Exactly 15 minutes since the stranger's last message. Sarah approached the door slowly, peering through the peephole. What she saw made her breath catch. A man stood in the hallway, and he looked nothing like what she'd expected. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair pulled back in a style that should have looked pretentious, but somehow didn't. He wore an expensive suit. Even through the distorted fisheye of the peephole, Sarah could tell it cost more than her monthly rent, but it was his face that held her attention. Strong features, a jaw that could have been carved from marble, and eyes that seemed to see through the door directly into her. Behind him stood another man, broader, with the bearing of someone who'd seen combat, a driver maybe, or a bodyguard. Sarah's hand hovered over the deadbolt. Every instinct screamed that this was a mistake, that opening the door to a strange man at midnight was the kind of decision that ended badly. But Emma whimpered from the couch, and Sarah thought about the desperation in her own text message, the plea that had gone to the wrong number but had somehow found someone who'd responded. She opened the door, keeping the chain lock engaged. "Sarah Mitchell." The man's voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't need to be raised to command attention. "Who are you?" "My name is Vincent. You texted me by mistake. You said your daughter was sick. I meant to text my babysitter. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "I know, but I'm here now, and I'd like to help." He glanced past her, toward where Emma lay on the couch. "May I come in?" Every rational part of Sarah's brain said no, but she looked at this man, this Vincent, and saw something in his expression that didn't match the expensive suit or the bodyguard or the way he carried himself like someone used to being obeyed. She saw concern, real, genuine concern. "Why?" Sarah asked. "Why would you come here? You don't know us." Vincent was quiet for a moment, his hand moving to touch something at his hip. A gold watch chain, Sarah noticed. "The number you texted belonged to my wife. She died 3 years ago. I kept the line active. When I saw your message..." He paused, and something flickered across his face, too quick to read. Let's just say I couldn't ignore it. Sarah felt her throat tighten. She looked back at Emma, then at Vincent, then made a decision that was probably stupid but felt in that moment like the only choice she had. She closed the door, unhooked the chain, and opened it again fully. "She's on the couch," Sarah said. "Her fever's 103.8. I gave her children's ibuprofen 20 minutes ago, but it hasn't kicked in yet." Vincent stepped inside, and the apartment seemed to shrink around him. He moved to the couch with surprising gentleness, kneeling beside Emma. The bodyguard remained in the hallway, a silent sentinel. "Hello, Emma," Vincent said softly. "My name is Vincent. Your mom asked me to check on you." Emma's eyes fluttered open, glassy with fever. "Are you a doctor?" "No, but I know some very good ones." He looked up at Sarah. Has she been sick before this? Any other symptoms besides the fever and sore throat? She had a cold last week, but it seemed to get better. This came on suddenly. She was fine when I left for work. Vincent nodded, then pulled out his phone. He dialed a number, and someone answered immediately. Dr. Reeves, it's Vincent Caruso. I need you at an address in Pilsen. Pediatric case, high fever, sudden onset. Yes, now. I don't care if you're at a dinner party, Michael. I need you here in 20 minutes. He rattled off Sarah's address and ended the call. Sarah stared at him. You just called a doctor to make a house call, at midnight. I did. Who are you? Vincent stood, his full height making the low ceiling of the apartment feel even lower. Someone who can help. That's all you need to know right now. There was something in the way he said it. Not a threat, but not quite a reassurance either. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty apartment. This man, whoever he was used to giving orders and having them followed. Used to moving through the world with a kind of power that didn't ask permission. I can't pay for a private doctor, Sarah said, her voice small. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? Vincent looked at her directly, and Sarah felt pinned by the intensity of his gaze. Nothing. Not yet. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with implication. Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to tell him to leave, that she'd handle this herself the way she handled everything. But Emma whimpered again, and Sarah's resolve crumbled. Thank you, she whispered. Vincent nodded once, then moved to the window, looking out at the rain-soaked street below. Dr. Reeves is the best pediatrician in Chicago. He'll take care of Emma. They waited in silence, Sarah sitting beside her daughter, Vincent standing by the window like a statue. The radiator clanked and hissed. Somewhere in the building, a couple was arguing in Spanish, their voices muffled by thin walls. 15 minutes later, another knock. Vincent opened the door to reveal a man in his 50s, slightly disheveled, carrying a medical bag and looking distinctly unhappy about being summoned at midnight. Vincent, Dr. Reeves said, his tone carefully neutral. You said pediatric? The girl on the couch. High fever, sore throat. Dr. Reeves moved to Emma immediately, his professionalism overriding whatever annoyance he felt. He examined her with practiced efficiency, checking her throat, her ears, listening to her lungs, taking her temperature. Strep throat, he announced after 5 minutes. Textbook case. I'll write a prescription for antibiotics. The fever should break within 24 hours once she starts the medication. He looked at Sarah. Has she had strep before? No. Is she going to be okay? She'll be fine. Make sure she finishes the full course of antibiotics, even after she starts feeling better, and keep her hydrated. He pulled out a prescription pad, scribbled something, and handed it to Sarah. Then he reached into his bag and produced a bottle. Liquid amoxicillin. I keep samples for emergencies. Start her on this tonight. 1 teaspoon every 12 hours. Sarah took the bottle with shaking hands. Thank you. I don't know how to thank Vincent, Dr. Reeves said dryly. He's the one who dragged me out of my daughter's engagement party. Vincent walked the doctor to the door, and Sarah heard them speaking in low tones. Money changed hands. She saw Vincent pass the doctor what looked like several $100 bills. Then Dr. Reeves was gone, and Vincent was back in her living room, looking at Emma with an expression Sarah couldn't quite read. She'll be okay, Vincent said. Because of you. Sarah stood, clutching the medicine bottle. I don't understand why you did this. You don't know us. That text was a mistake. Maybe it wasn't. What does that mean? Vincent moved toward the door, and Sarah thought he was leaving, but he paused, his hand on the doorknob, and turned back to her. Your daughter's name is Emma. You work overnight shifts at a hospital to make ends meet. You're doing this alone. It wasn't a question. How do you? I make it my business to know things. He pulled a card from his jacket pocket and set it on the small table by the door. If you need anything at all, call that number. Sarah looked at the card. It was plain white, with nothing but a phone number embossed in black. No name, no title, no company. Who are you, really? Sarah asked. Vincent smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Someone who just made your daughter his priority. Good night, Sarah. He left, the bodyguard falling into step behind him. Sarah stood in her doorway, watching them disappear down the stairwell, and felt like she'd just stepped into a story she didn't know how to read. She closed the door, locked it, and returned to Emma. The little girl was already sleeping more peacefully, the medicine beginning to work its magic. Sarah administered the antibiotic, then sat on the floor beside the couch, her back against the worn cushions. and let herself cry, from relief, from exhaustion, from the sheer impossibility of what had just happened. A stranger had come to her door at midnight, a stranger who commanded doctors and paid in cash, and looked at her daughter with something that might have been tenderness, a stranger who'd said Emma was his priority, as if that was a perfectly normal thing to say. Sarah picked up the card from the table, turning it over in her hands. Just a number, no answers. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and somewhere in Chicago, Vincent Caruso sat in the back of his Mercedes, touching the gold watch at his hip and wondering what the hell he'd just started. 3 days passed before Sarah heard from Vincent again. 3 days in which Emma's fever broke, her energy returned, and life resumed its normal rhythm of work shifts and daycare drop-offs, and the constant mental arithmetic of which bills could wait another week. 3 days in which Sarah told herself that the midnight visit had been an aberration, a strange moment of kindness from a man she'd never see again. She was wrong. On Thursday evening, Sarah arrived home from her day shift at the hospital. She'd picked up extra hours in the cafeteria to make up for the night she'd missed, to find a package outside her apartment door. A large box, professionally wrapped, with her name on it but no return address. Inside was a humidifier, top of the line, the kind Sarah had priced online and dismissed as impossibly expensive. Tucked beneath it was a smaller box containing children's vitamins, organic honey for tea, and a stuffed rabbit, this one pristine and new, wearing a tiny jacket embroidered with the name President Roosevelt. The card was simple, for Emma. Sarah's hands trembled as she carried the boxes inside. This was too much. This was the kind of gift that came with expectations, with strings attached. She should return it all, should call that mysterious number on the card and tell Vincent Caruso, whoever he really was, that she didn't need his charity. But Emma saw the rabbit and squealed with delight, and Sarah couldn't bring herself to take it away. That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah did what she should have done 3 days ago. She Googled Vincent Caruso. The search results made her blood run cold. Vincent Caruso, head of the Caruso crime family, suspected involvement in racketeering, money laundering, and, though never proven, at least 3 murders. A man who'd inherited his father's empire at 35 and had spent the last 7 years consolidating power across Chicago's South Side. A man who appeared in society pages at charity galas and in police reports with equal frequency, always photographed in expensive suits, always walking the razor's edge between legitimate businessman and organized crime. Sarah closed her laptop and sat in the darkness of her living room, her heart pounding. She'd let a mob boss into her home. She'd let him near her daughter. And now he was sending gifts, inserting himself into their lives, with the kind of casual power that suggested he was used to getting what he wanted. She should run. She should pack up Emma and disappear into another city, another life. But Sarah had been running from poverty and bad luck her entire adult life, and she was tired. So tired. The phone rang. Her actual phone, not a text. The number on the screen matched the card Vincent had left. Sarah answered, her voice steadier than she felt. "I know who you are. I assumed you'd look me up eventually." Vincent's voice was calm, unsurprised. "Are you scared? Should I be?" "Not of me. Never of me. You're a criminal. I'm a businessman who operates in gray areas. There's a difference." "Is there?" Sarah stood, pacing her small living room. "You sent gifts to my daughter." "Why?" "Because she was sick, and I wanted to help. Nobody helps for free, especially not people like you." A pause. Then, "You're right. Nobody does. But my reasons are my own, and they don't involve you owing me anything. I don't believe you. You don't have to. But Sarah," his voice dropped lower, taking on an edge that made her shiver. "There are people in this city who would hurt you and Emma just to get to me. Now that I've been to your apartment, now that I've involved myself, you're on their radar. Whether you like it or not, you need my protection." Sarah felt the room tilt. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I made a choice 3 nights ago, and that choice has consequences. I'm saying that Emma is my priority now, and I protect what's mine. She's not yours. We're not yours. Not yet, but you will be, because the alternative is leaving you vulnerable, and I won't do that." The arrogance of it, the sheer presumption, should have made Sarah furious. Instead, she felt something closer to terror. "I want you to leave us alone." "I can't do that." "Why not?" Another pause, longer this time. When Vincent spoke again, his voice carried a weight that felt like confession. "Because 3 years ago, I lost someone I couldn't protect. and I've been looking for a way to make that right ever since. You texted my dead wife's number, Sarah. You asked for help, and I'm going to give it to you, whether you want it or not." Sarah sank onto the couch, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. "This is insane." "Yes, but it's happening. I'll have someone watching your building. You won't see them, but they'll be there. If anyone approaches you, if anything feels wrong, you call me immediately. And if I refuse, then I'll do it anyway, and you'll just be angry about it." Despite everything, the fear, the confusion, the absolute insanity of the situation, Sarah almost laughed. There was something darkly honest about his response, a refusal to pretend this was anything other than what it was. A powerful man making a unilateral decision about her life. "I don't know what to say to you," Sarah admitted. "Say you'll be careful. Say you'll call if you need anything. That's enough for now." Sarah looked at the stuffed rabbit on the couch, at the humidifier running quietly in Emma's room, at the evidence of Vincent's intrusion into their lives. "The gifts are gifts. Nothing more. I'm not trying to buy you, Sarah. I'm trying to take care of you." "Why?" "Because nobody else is." The words hit harder than they should have. Sarah had been alone for so long, since before Emma was born really, that she'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone notice her struggle, let alone try to ease it. "I have to go," Sarah said, her voice thick. "Emma will be up soon. One more thing." Vincent's tone shifted, becoming harder. "If anyone asks about me, police, reporters, anyone, you don't know me. We've never met. Understood? I thought you said I was under your protection. You are. But protection means keeping you separate from my business. The less you know, the safer you are." Sarah ended the call without saying goodbye. She sat in the darkness, listening to the radiator clank and Emma's soft breathing from the bedroom, and tried to figure out how her life had become a crime novel. The next morning, Sarah noticed him, a man in a gray jacket, sitting in a car across the street from her building. He was there when she left for work, there when she returned. Different car the next day, same watchful presence. Vincent had meant what he said. She was being guarded. At first, it felt invasive, like being watched by a predator. But as days turned into a week, Sarah began to feel something else. Safe. The neighborhood she lived in wasn't dangerous exactly, but it wasn't safe either. She'd been mugged once 2 years ago, and had learned to walk with her keys between her fingers and her phone in her hand. Now, with Vincent's invisible protection, she felt the constant tension in her shoulders begin to ease. She hated that she felt grateful, hated that she was starting to depend on it. Emma, oblivious to the undercurrents, thrived. The strep throat was a distant memory. She played with President Roosevelt and asked occasionally about the nice man who came to visit. Sarah deflected, changed the subject, and tried not to think about Vincent Caruso too often. She failed. 2 weeks after the midnight visit, Sarah was leaving the hospital after a double shift when she saw him. Vincent, leaning against a black Mercedes in the parking garage, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread. The bodyguard, Marcus, she'd learned his name from a news article, stood nearby, scanning the area with professional paranoia. Sarah's first instinct was to turn around, to pretend she hadn't seen him. But Vincent had already spotted her, and he pushed off the car with the kind of fluid grace that suggested violence was always an option, just not currently necessary. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "Making sure you get home safely. It's late. I've been getting home safely for years without your help. Humor me." Sarah wanted to argue, but exhaustion won out. She'd been on her feet for 16 hours. Her back ached, and the bus ride home would take 45 minutes. Fine. But just this once. Vincent opened the back door of the Mercedes, and Sarah climbed in, sinking into leather seats that probably cost more than her car had. Vincent slid in beside her, maintaining a careful distance, and Marcus started the engine. They drove in silence for several minutes, the city sliding past the tinted windows. Sarah watched the familiar streets, the taco stands and corner stores, the murals painted on brick walls, the evidence of a neighborhood that was gentrifying in fits and starts. "How's Emma?" Vincent asked. "She's fine, healthy, happy." "Good." More silence. Then Sarah asked the question that had been burning in her mind for 2 weeks. "Why us? Out of everyone in this city who needs help, why did you choose us?" Vincent was quiet for so long that Sarah thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant, as if he was talking to someone else entirely. "My wife wanted children. We tried for 2 years. She was pregnant when she died, 8 weeks along. I lost them both in the same moment. He touched the watch chain at his hip, that habitual gesture Sarah was beginning to recognize. When I saw your text, asking for help for Emma, it felt like a second chance, a way to do something right. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. I'm sorry. About your wife. Her name was Lucia. She was a teacher, 3rd grade. She believed in second chances, in redemption. She thought I could be better than what my family made me. He smiled, but it was the saddest thing Sarah had ever seen. She was wrong, but I loved her for believing it. Maybe she wasn't wrong. Vincent looked at her then, really looked at her, and Sarah felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. Don't make me into something I'm not, Sarah. I'm helping you because it serves a need in me, not because I'm a good man. Maybe they're the same thing. They're not. The car pulled up outside Sarah's building. Marcus got out first, scanning the street, then nodded to Vincent. Sarah reached for the door handle, but Vincent's voice stopped her. Sarah, if you ever need to leave, if staying in Chicago becomes dangerous, I'll make sure you and Emma have a way out. Money, new identities, whatever you need. I want you to know that. Why would I need to leave? Vincent's expression darkened. Because the world I live in doesn't play by rules. And sometimes, people I care about get hurt because of proximity to me. I'm trying to prevent that, but I need you to be ready, just in case. Sarah felt cold despite the car's heating. You're scaring me. Good. Fear keeps you careful. But know this. I will do everything in my power to keep you and Emma safe. Everything. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice, and got out of the car. She watched the Mercedes drive away, its taillights disappearing into Chicago's night, and felt like she was standing on the edge of something vast and dark, with no map to guide her. Upstairs, Mrs. Chen handed over a sleeping Emma with a knowing look. That's a dangerous man to be involved with, Sarah. I'm not involved with him. Then why is he watching your building every night? Sarah had no answer. She carried Emma to bed, tucked President Roosevelt beside her, and lay awake until dawn, thinking about Vincent Caruso and the way he'd said people I care about, as if she and Emma had already crossed some invisible line into his world. And maybe they had. Maybe they'd crossed it the moment Sarah's desperate text had found its way to a dead woman's phone, to a grieving man who'd been looking for redemption and found it in the form of a single mother and her sick child. Outside, the watchman in the gray jacket changed shifts with someone new. The protection continued, invisible but constant, and Sarah fell asleep, wondering if she'd ever feel truly alone again. The call came at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday in early December, shattering the fragile peace Sarah had built over the past 3 weeks. Not Vincent's number, a different one, unfamiliar, but the voice on the other end was Marcus, the bodyguard, and his tone made Sarah's blood freeze. Ms. Mitchell, you need to pack a bag. Now. We're moving you and Emma to a safe location. Sarah was already out of bed, her heart hammering. What happened? The Moretti family knows about you. They're making moves tonight. Vincent wants you out of that apartment in 10 minutes. The Moretti, I don't understand. You don't need to understand. You need to pack. Clothes for 3 days, Emma's essentials, nothing else. I'm outside your building. Move. The line went dead. Sarah stood in her dark bedroom, her mind racing, then snapped into action. She'd grown up poor, had learned early how to pack fast and leave faster. She grabbed a duffel bag and started throwing in clothes, jeans, sweaters, Emma's favorite pajamas, the stuffed rabbits including President Roosevelt. Emma woke as Sarah was pulling her coat on. Mama, what's happening? We're going on an adventure, baby. A surprise trip. In the middle of the night? The best adventures start in the middle of the night. Sarah's voice was steady, but her hands shook as she zipped the bag. She grabbed Emma's hand and her phone, then paused at the door. The apartment looked small and shabby in the dim light, but it was theirs. It was home, and Sarah had no idea if she'd ever see it again. Marcus was waiting in the lobby, his face grim. Car's running. Let's go. He hustled them into the Mercedes. A different one, Sarah noticed, darker and more anonymous, and they pulled away from the curb with controlled urgency. Emma pressed her face to the window, watching the familiar streets disappear. Where's Vincent? Sarah asked, handling the situation. What situation? What is happening? Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror, his expression softening slightly. The Morettis found out Vincent's been protecting you. They see you as leverage. Vincent's making sure they understand that touching you would be a fatal mistake. Sarah felt sick. This is because of me. This is because of a power struggle that's been brewing for months. You're just the spark, but Vincent won't let anything happen to you or Emma. You have my word on that." They drove for 40 minutes, leaving the city behind, heading north into suburbs Sarah had never visited. The houses grew larger, the streets quieter, until Marcus turned into the driveway of a sprawling property hidden behind high walls and security gates. "Where are we?" "One of Vincent's properties. Safest place in Chicago right now." The house was enormous. A modern mansion with floor-to-ceiling windows and security cameras visible at every corner. Marcus led them inside, where a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and efficient movements was waiting. "I'm Rosa," she said, her accent Italian, her smile warm despite the circumstances. "I keep house for Mr. Caruso. You must be Sarah and Emma. Come, I'll show you to your rooms." Emma was asleep on her feet, and Sarah carried her up a grand staircase to a bedroom that looked like something from a hotel magazine. Rosa pulled back the covers of a bed that could have fit 4 people, and Sarah laid Emma down gently, tucking President Roosevelt beside her. "Your room is next door," Rosa said. "I'll bring you some tea." Sarah followed her to an adjoining bedroom, equally luxurious, and sank onto the bed. Her hands were still shaking. Rosa returned with tea and a plate of cookies, setting them on the nightstand with maternal efficiency. "Mr. Caruso will be here in the morning," Rosa said. "Try to rest. You're safe here." But Sarah couldn't rest. She sat by the window, watching the pre-dawn darkness, and tried to process how quickly her life had spiraled. 3 weeks ago, she'd been a single mother struggling to pay bills. Now she was hiding in a mansion because a mob war was using her as a pawn. Vincent arrived at 6:30 a.m., looking like he'd been up all night. His suit was rumpled, his hair loose around his shoulders instead of tied back, and there was a hardness in his eyes that Sarah hadn't seen before. This was Vincent Caruso, the crime boss, not the man who'd knelt beside her daughter with gentle concern. He found Sarah in the kitchen, where Rosa had insisted on making breakfast, despite Sarah's protests that she couldn't eat. "Are you hurt?" Vincent asked, his eyes scanning her as if checking for injuries. "No, scared, but not hurt." "Vincent, what is happening?" He poured himself coffee, his movements controlled but tense. "The Morettis have been pushing boundaries for months. Last night they made a move on one of my operations. When my people pushed back, they threatened to retaliate by going after the woman and kid Caruso's been playing house with." His jaw tightened. "They made you a target to get to me. So this is my fault." "No." Vincent's voice was sharp. "This is my fault. I knew getting involved with you would paint a target on your back, and I did it anyway because I was selfish. Because helping you made me feel like less of a monster." He set down his coffee cup with enough force that it cracked. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so goddamn sorry." Sarah had never heard him sound like this. Raw, angry at himself, almost vulnerable. She stood and moved closer, not touching him but close enough to feel the tension radiating off him. "What happens now? Now I end this. The Morettis crossed a line. They threatened a child. There are rules, even in my world, and they broke the most important one." He looked at her, and Sarah saw something cold and final in his expression. "By tomorrow, the Moretti family will no longer be a problem." "What does that mean?" "It means you don't ask questions you don't want answers to." Sarah swallowed hard. "Are you going to kill people?" Vincent didn't answer, which was answer enough. "I don't want blood on my hands," Sarah whispered. "It won't be on your hands. It'll be on mine, where it's always been." He reached out, almost touching her face, then dropped his hand. "Stay here. Don't leave the property. Rosa will take care of you and Emma. I'll be back when this is finished." "Vincent, I have to go." "But Sarah..." He paused at the kitchen door, his back to her. "If something happens to me, Marcus has instructions. You and Emma will be taken care of. New identities, money, everything you need to start over somewhere safe. Don't talk like that." "I have to, because the truth is, I might not survive what I'm about to do, and I need to know you'll be okay if I don't." He left before Sarah could respond, and she stood in the massive kitchen of a mansion that wasn't hers, listening to the sound of his car driving away, and felt like she was watching someone walk into a fire. The day passed in surreal slow motion. Emma woke and was delighted by the house, treating it like a vacation. Rosa kept them fed and distracted, showing Emma the library and the garden, acting as if hiding from mobsters was perfectly normal. Sarah tried Vincent's number 3 times. It went straight to voicemail. She tried Marcus. Same result. By evening, Sarah was pacing the living room, her anxiety a living thing clawing at her chest. Rosa brought dinner, but Sarah couldn't eat. She put Emma to bed with a story about princesses and castles, then returned to her vigil by the window. At 11:43 p.m., headlights appeared in the driveway. Sarah's heart leapt, but it wasn't Vincent's car. It was an ambulance, lights off, moving with quiet urgency. Sarah ran outside, Rosa close behind her. The ambulance doors opened, and Marcus emerged, his face grim. Behind him, paramedics were wheeling out a stretcher. Vincent lay on it, unconscious, his white shirt soaked with blood. Sarah's world tilted. No. He's alive, Marcus said quickly, gripping her shoulders. Gunshot wound upper chest, missed the heart by 2 inches. He's stable, but he needs surgery. Why isn't he at a hospital? Because hospitals ask questions, and Vincent can't afford questions right now. We have a doctor coming here, the best trauma surgeon in the state. He'll be okay, Sarah. He's survived worse. They brought Vincent inside, converting one of the ground floor bedrooms into a makeshift operating room. Sarah watched from the doorway as the surgeon, a woman in her 40s with steady hands and a no-nonsense demeanor, went to work. Rosa pulled Sarah away gently. Come. You can't help him by watching. We wait, and we pray. I don't pray. Then tonight, you learn. Sarah sat in the living room, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Marcus stood by the window, his phone to his ear, speaking in low, urgent tones. Sarah caught fragments. Moretti's dead. The old man, too. It's over. It's over. Vincent had ended the war, but at what cost? 2 hours later, the surgeon emerged, pulling off bloodied gloves. He'll live. The bullet's out. No major organ damage. He'll need rest and antibiotics. But he's strong. He should wake up in a few hours. Sarah felt her legs give out. Rosa caught her, guiding her to a chair, murmuring reassurances in Italian. Can I see him? Sarah asked. The surgeon nodded, briefly. He needs rest. Sarah entered the room on shaking legs. Vincent lay in the hospital bed they'd somehow procured, his chest bandaged, his face pale but peaceful. He looked younger in sleep, less like a crime boss and more like a man who'd been carrying too much weight for too long. Sarah pulled a chair beside the bed and took his hand, the first time she'd deliberately touched him. His skin was warm, his pulse steady beneath her fingers. You idiot, she whispered. You stupid, self-sacrificing idiot. Vincent's eyes fluttered open. His voice was hoarse, barely audible. Sarah? I'm here. Don't talk. You need to rest. Emma? She's safe. Asleep upstairs. She doesn't know anything happened. Vincent's grip on her hand tightened slightly. Good. That's good. You almost died, but I didn't. And the Morettis won't threaten you again. It's over. Was it worth it? Almost dying for us? Vincent looked at her with eyes that were clearer than they should have been for someone who'd just been shot. Yes, every second of it. Sarah felt tears spill over, and she didn't try to stop them. I don't understand you. I don't understand why you care so much. Because you texted my dead wife's number and asked for help. Because your daughter's name is Emma, and that was going to be our daughter's name. Because when I look at you, I see a second chance at being something other than what I am. He coughed, wincing. And because somewhere along the way, you stopped being a stranger and became someone I can't imagine losing. Sarah leaned forward, pressing her forehead to their joined hands. You can't say things like that. Why not? Because I might start believing them. And then where would we be? Vincent smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. Somewhere new, somewhere better. The surgeon appeared in the doorway. That's enough. He needs to sleep, and so do you, Ms. Mitchell. Sarah stood reluctantly, but Vincent didn't let go of her hand. Stay, please, just until I fall asleep. So Sarah stayed, sitting beside a man who'd taken a bullet to protect her, and watched him drift into healing sleep. And somewhere in that quiet room, with Rose's prayers drifting in from the hallway and Emma safe upstairs, Sarah felt something shift inside her, a wall she'd built years ago, beginning to crumble. Vincent recovered with the kind of stubborn determination that didn't surprise anyone who knew him. Within 3 days, he was up and walking, ignoring the surgeon's protests. Within a week, he was back to running his operations from the mansion's study, conducting business via encrypted calls, while Sarah and Emma remained under his roof. Sarah should have insisted on going home. The threat was over. The Moretti family had been decimated, their leadership dead or in hiding, their territory absorbed into the Caruso Empire. But Vincent asked her to stay, just a few more days, until I'm certain it's safe, and Sarah found herself agreeing. The truth was, she didn't want to leave, and that terrified her more than any mob war. Life in the mansion took on a strange domesticity. Emma thrived, running through rooms that echoed with her laughter, playing hide-and-seek with Rosa, and teaching Vincent the names of all her stuffed rabbits. Vincent, for his part, transformed in Emma's presence. The hard edges softened. He sat on the floor for tea parties. He read bedtime stories with the kind of focus he usually reserved for business negotiations. And Sarah watched it all, her heart doing complicated things she couldn't name. One evening, after Emma was asleep, Sarah found Vincent in the study. He was standing by the window, his shirt unbuttoned enough to show the edge of his bandages, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "You should be resting," Sarah said from the doorway. "I've been resting for a week. I'm going stir-crazy." He turned to look at her, and something in his expression made Sarah's breath catch. "Come in, please." Sarah entered, closing the door behind her. The study was all dark wood and leather, the kind of room designed for important decisions. She felt small in it, out of place. "I've been thinking," Vincent said, setting down his glass, "about what happens next. I should go home, back to my apartment, my job, normal life. Is that what you want?" Sarah opened her mouth to say yes, but the word wouldn't come. "I don't know what I want anymore." Vincent moved closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the heat of him. "I know what I want. I want you and Emma to stay, not just for a few more days, permanently." Sarah's heart hammered. "Vincent, I'm not asking you to marry me or be with me romantically. I'm asking you to let me take care of you, both of you. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I have resources, protection, power, and I want to use all of it to make sure you and Emma never struggle again. That's not how life works. It's how my life works. And it could be how yours works too." Sarah shook her head, backing away. "You're talking about making us dependent on you. What happens when you get tired of playing house? When the novelty wears off? That won't happen. You don't know that. I do." Vincent closed the distance between them, and Sarah found herself backed against the desk. "Sarah, I've spent 3 years feeling nothing. Lucia died, and something in me died with her. I went through the motions, ran the family, made money, survived, but I wasn't living. And then you sent that text, and something woke up. Something I thought was gone forever. I'm not your dead wife. I know. You're nothing like her. And that's not what this is about. This is about the fact that when I'm with you and Emma, I remember what it feels like to be human, to care about something other than power and territory, to want to be better." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "You can't put that on me. I can't be responsible for your redemption. I'm not asking you to be. I'm asking you to let me be part of your life, to let me help you build something better than what you have now. And what do you get out of it?" Vincent smiled sadly. "A reason to come home at night. A little girl who thinks I'm capable of being good. A woman who looks at me like I'm a man instead of a monster." He reached up, almost touching her face, then dropped his hand. "That's worth more than any empire, Sarah." Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons this was insane. But she thought about Emma's laughter echoing through this house, about the way Vincent read bedtime stories with such careful attention, about the fact that for the first time in years, Sarah didn't feel alone. "I need time," she whispered. "I need to think. Take all the time you need. But know this, whether you stay or go, I'm not disappearing from your lives. I meant what I said. Emma is my priority, and so are you." He left the study, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts and the weight of a decision that would change everything. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, and tried to imagine 2 futures. In one, she returned to her apartment, her job, her struggle. She'd be independent, self-sufficient, beholden to no one. But she'd also be alone, always one emergency away from disaster, always fighting to keep her head above water. In the other, she stayed. She let Vincent into their lives fully, accepted his protection and his resources. Emma would grow up safe, educated, wanting for nothing. But Sarah would be tied to a man whose world was built on violence, whose enemies could become hers, whose very presence was a kind of danger. At 3 a.m., Sarah got up and went to Emma's room. Her daughter was sprawled across the massive bed, President Roosevelt clutched in one hand, her face peaceful in sleep. Sarah sat beside her, brushing hair from her forehead, and thought about all the times she'd lain awake worrying, about bills, about Emma's future, about whether she was enough. What kind of mother would she be if she turned down the chance to give Emma everything she'd never had? But what kind of mother would she be if she brought Emma deeper into Vincent's world? The answer came not in logic, but in feeling. Sarah was already in Vincent's world. The moment she'd texted that wrong number, the moment Vincent had shown up at her door, the moment he'd taken a bullet to protect them, they'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The question wasn't whether to be in Vincent's life, it was whether to accept it on his terms, or try to negotiate her own. The next morning, Sarah found Vincent in the kitchen, making coffee with one hand, while the other pressed against his healing wound. He looked up when she entered, his expression carefully neutral. "I have conditions," Sarah said without preamble. Vincent set down the coffee pot. "I'm listening. If we stay, I'm not your kept woman. I get a job, something meaningful, not just busy work. I pay my own way as much as I can." Agreed. Emma goes to a good school, but a normal one, not some elite academy where everyone knows who you are. I want her to have a real childhood. I can arrange that. And you don't lie to me. Ever. I know you can't tell me everything about your business, but if something's going to affect us, I need to know. Vincent nodded slowly. That's fair. One more thing. Sarah took a breath. You don't get to make decisions about Emma without consulting me. You're not her father, I don't know what you are, but I'm her mother and my word is final. Understood. Vincent moved closer, his eyes searching hers. Anything else? Yeah. If this doesn't work, if it becomes too dangerous, or if you change your mind, or if I decide this was a mistake, you let us go. No threats, no manipulation. You let us walk away. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. You have my word. On Lucia's memory, I swear it. Sarah took his hand, and they shook on it. A deal made in a kitchen at dawn, between a single mother and a crime boss, with a little girl's future hanging in the balance. So, we're doing this, Sarah said, half statement, half question. We're doing this. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, President Roosevelt dragging behind her. Mama, are we staying here? Sarah looked at Vincent, then at her daughter, then back at Vincent. Yeah, baby, we're staying. Emma's face lit up. Forever? For now. That's enough. Vincent knelt down, carefully, favoring his injury, and Emma ran to him, wrapping her small arms around his neck. Over her daughter's head, Sarah met Vincent's eyes and saw something that looked like hope. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't even close to normal, but it was theirs. And for the first time in years, Sarah felt like she was building something instead of just surviving. Outside, the December sun broke through Chicago's clouds, and in the mansion's kitchen, a makeshift family took its first uncertain steps toward something that might, against all odds, be called home. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the doorway of Vincent's study, their study now, she supposed, and watched him work. He was on a video call, his voice low and authoritative, conducting business with the kind of controlled intensity she'd come to recognize. His hair was tied back, his shirt sleeves rolled up, and the scar from the gunshot wound was visible at the edge of his collar, a permanent reminder of the price he'd paid. When he noticed her, he wrapped up the call quickly. Give me a minute, he told whoever was on the other end, then muted the screen. Everything okay? Emma's asking if you'll be home for dinner. Rosa's making lasagna. A smile transformed Vincent's face, the real one, the one Sarah had learned to distinguish from his business smile. Tell her I wouldn't miss it. Sarah nodded but didn't leave. Vincent tilted his head, reading her hesitation. What is it? I got the job, at the community center in Pilsen. They want me to start next week. Vincent stood, moving around the desk. That's incredible. Congratulations. It's part-time and it doesn't pay much. It's what you wanted. That's what matters. Sarah had spent the past 3 months figuring out what she wanted, and the answer had surprised her. She wanted to help other single mothers like herself. The community center job would let her coordinate resources, connect families with services, be the kind of support she'd needed when Emma was born. It felt right, in a way her hospital jobs never had. Vincent, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Always. Are you happy? Really happy? Or are you just going through the motions because you made a promise? Vincent was quiet, his expression thoughtful. Then he reached out and took her hand, a gesture that had become familiar over the past months, though they'd maintained careful boundaries, sleeping in separate rooms, keeping their relationship undefined. I'm happy, he said simply. Happier than I've been in years. Emma makes me laugh every day. Rosa stopped worrying that I'll work myself to death. And you? He paused, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. You make me want to be the man you think I am. I don't think you're a saint, Vincent. I know. That's why it works. Sarah squeezed his hand, then let go. Finish your call. We'll see you at dinner. Dinner had become a ritual. Every night, unless Vincent was handling an emergency, they sat together at the massive dining table. Vincent, Sarah, Emma, and Rosa, who'd become less of a housekeeper and more of a grandmother figure. They ate, they talked, they laughed at Emma's stories about her new school. Tonight, Emma was particularly animated, describing a class project about family trees. And I told everyone that Vincent is my... She paused, frowning. What are you, Vincent? You're not my daddy. The table went quiet. Sarah's heart clenched, and she saw Vincent's carefully controlled expression flicker with something vulnerable. What do you want me to be? Vincent asked gently. Emma considered this with the seriousness only a 5-year-old could muster. I think you're my Vincent. That's your own special thing. Vincent's smile was soft, genuine. I like that. I'm your Vincent. And Mama's Vincent too? Sarah felt her face heat. Emma, well, he is, isn't he? He lives with us and takes care of us and reads us stories. That's what Vincents do. Rosa laughed, a warm sound that filled the dining room. The child has wisdom. You should listen to her. After dinner, Sarah helped Emma get ready for bed. As she tucked her daughter in, Emma looked up at her with those 2 perceptive eyes. Mama, do you love Vincent? Sarah's breath caught. What makes you ask that? Because you look at him the way Princess Belle looks at the beast in my book, like you see something nobody else sees. You're too smart for your own good, you know that? That's not an answer. Sarah smoothed Emma's hair, buying time. I care about Vincent very much. He's important to us. But do you love him? I don't know yet, baby. Love is complicated. It doesn't seem complicated. You either do or you don't. When you're older, you'll understand that it's not always that simple. Emma yawned, her eyelids drooping. I love him. He's the best Vincent ever. Sarah kissed her forehead. Sleep tight, baby. She left Emma's room and found Vincent waiting in the hallway, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. I wasn't eavesdropping. I was just coming to say goodnight. Sure you were. Okay. I was eavesdropping a little. Did you mean what you said? That you don't know yet? Sarah looked at him. This man who'd upended her life, who'd taken a bullet for her, who'd given her and Emma safety and stability and something that felt dangerously close to family. I meant it. I don't know yet, but I'm figuring it out. Vincent pushed off the wall, closing the distance between them. They were standing in the hallway outside Emma's room, close enough that Sarah could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could smell his cologne mixed with the scent of coffee. Take your time, Vincent said softly. I'm not going anywhere. What about you? Do you love me? The question surprised them both. Vincent's expression shifted, becoming more open than Sarah had ever seen it. I think I started loving you the moment you opened your door at midnight and let a stranger into your home because your daughter needed help. I think I loved you when you stood up to me, set boundaries, refused to be intimidated. And I know I love you now, watching you build a life here, watching you be an incredible mother, watching you figure out who you are when you're not just surviving. He reached up, cupping her face gently. So yes, Sarah, I love you, and I'll wait as long as it takes for you to figure out how you feel about me. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. That's not fair. You can't just say things like that. Why not? Because it makes it harder to keep my walls up. Good. I want your walls down. I want all of you. The scared parts, the strong parts, the parts that don't trust easily. I want to earn every piece of you. Sarah leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. You're making this very difficult. That's the idea. She opened her eyes and found him watching her with such tenderness that it hurt. Ask me again in a month. Maybe I'll have an answer by then. I'll ask you every month for the rest of my life if that's what it takes. Vincent leaned down, and for a moment, Sarah thought he might kiss her. But instead, he pressed his lips to her forehead, a gesture that was somehow more intimate than a kiss, more full of promise. Good night, Sarah. Good night, Vincent. The month passed in a blur of new routines. Sarah started her job at the community center and fell in love with the work. Emma thrived in her new school, making friends and bringing home artwork that Rosa displayed like museum pieces. Vincent continued running his empire, but he was home more often than not, present in ways that mattered. And slowly, carefully, Sarah's walls came down. She started joining Vincent in the study after Emma was asleep, sitting in the leather chair across from his desk while he worked, reading, or just being present. They talked about everything: her childhood, his family history, their fears and hopes, and the strange path that had brought them together. One night, Vincent told her about Lucia's death in detail: the drunk driver, the phone call, the moment he'd identified her body. Sarah held his hand through it, offering silent support, and understood that this was Vincent's way of letting her in completely. Another night, Sarah told him about Emma's father, a college boyfriend who'd disappeared the moment she'd mentioned pregnancy, leaving her alone and terrified at 22. Vincent's expression had gone cold, and Sarah had to make him promise not to track the man down. "He's not worth your time," Sarah had said. "He gave me Emma, and that's the only good thing he ever did." They were building something, brick by brick, conversation by conversation, and Sarah could feel herself falling. Not the desperate, all-consuming fall of youth, but the steady, certain fall of someone who'd learned to recognize real love when she saw it. The month ended on a Saturday. Vincent had taken the day off, a rare occurrence, and they'd spent it at Navy Pier with Emma, riding the Ferris wheel and eating overpriced hot dogs and acting like a normal family. As the sun set over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Emma fell asleep in Vincent's arms, exhausted from the day's adventures. They drove home in comfortable silence, and after putting Emma to bed together, they found themselves back in the hallway where they'd stood a month ago. "It's been a month," Vincent said quietly. "I know. Do you have an answer?" Sarah looked at this man who'd become her partner, her protector, her friend. She thought about the way he read bedtime stories with such focus, the way he listened when she talked about her day, the way he'd built a life around them without ever making her feel trapped. "Yeah," Sarah said, her voice steady. "I have an answer." Vincent waited, his expression carefully neutral, but Sarah could see the tension in his shoulders, the hope he was trying to hide. "I love you," Sarah said simply. "I don't know when it happened exactly. Maybe it was gradual, or maybe it was all at once. But I love you, Vincent Caruso, and that terrifies me, but I'm done pretending it's not true." Vincent's expression transformed, relief and joy and something deeper, something that looked like coming home. He pulled her close, and this time when he leaned down, he didn't stop at her forehead. He kissed her, and it was gentle and fierce, and full of 3 months of restrained longing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret saying that. That's a big promise. I'm good at keeping promises." Sarah laughed, the sound bright in the quiet hallway. "What happens now?" "Now we figure it out together. No more separate rooms. No more careful boundaries. We build a real life, the 3 of us." "4," Rosa called from downstairs. "I'm part of this family too." They both laughed, and Sarah felt something settle in her chest, a sense of rightness, of being exactly where she was supposed to be. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the same hallway, but everything had changed. The mansion felt like home now, filled with Emma's artwork and Sarah's books, and the evidence of a life fully lived. Vincent's business was thriving, but he'd stepped back from the day-to-day operations, delegating more, prioritizing family over empire. Sarah's job at the community center had expanded. She was now directing programs, helping dozens of families find their footing. Emma was excelling in school, her collection of stuffed rabbits growing to include Presidents Taft, Wilson, and Coolidge. And Sarah and Vincent had built something real, a partnership based on trust and honesty, and the kind of love that grew stronger with time. Tonight, Vincent was late coming home from a meeting. Sarah had put Emma to bed and was reading in the study when she heard his car in the driveway. She met him at the door and immediately knew something was different. "What happened?" Vincent pulled her close, holding her tight. "I made a decision today. A big one. Tell me. I'm stepping down. Not completely. I'll still be involved, still provide oversight, but I'm handing day-to-day operations to Tony. I'm done being the man who takes bullets and makes enemies and lives in constant danger." Sarah pulled back to look at him. "Vincent, that's your legacy, your family's empire. My legacy is in there," he said, nodding toward the stairs where Emma slept. "And right here," he added, touching Sarah's face, "I've spent my whole life building power, and it almost got me killed. It almost got you and Emma killed. I'm done choosing the empire over the people I love. Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Sarah kissed him, pouring everything she felt into it. gratitude and love, and admiration for this man who'd chosen them over everything else. When they broke apart, Vincent reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Sarah's heart stopped. "I'm not proposing," Vincent said quickly, seeing her expression. "Not yet. I know you're not ready for that, but I wanted you to have this." He opened the box to reveal a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant. A rabbit, beautifully crafted, with tiny emerald eyes. "For your collection," Vincent said softly. "President Sarah." Sarah laughed through tears. "I'm not a president. You are to me. You're the leader of this family, the one who holds us together. You're the bravest person I know." Sarah let him fasten the necklace around her neck, the pendant settling just above her heart. "Thank you for everything, for finding us, for protecting us, for loving us. Thank you for letting me, for taking a chance on a stranger who showed up at your door at midnight." They stood in the foyer of the mansion that had become their home, holding each other, and Sarah thought about that desperate text message she'd sent 6 months ago. A wrong number that had turned into the rightest thing in her life. "I love you," Sarah whispered. "I love you too. Both of you. My whole world." Upstairs, Emma slept peacefully, surrounded by her presidential rabbits. In the kitchen, Rosa hummed as she prepared tomorrow's breakfast. And in the foyer, Sarah and Vincent held each other, two people who'd found family in the most unexpected way. The rain that had been threatening all evening finally began to fall, drumming against the windows like a lullaby. Sarah remembered that first night, the rain and the fear and the desperate hope that someone, anyone, would help. Someone had, and in helping, he'd saved them all, including himself. "Come on," Sarah said, taking Vincent's hand. "Let's go home." "We are home. I know. That's the best part." They climbed the stairs together, and behind them, the mansion settled into night, a fortress that had become a home, sheltering a family built not by blood, but by choice, by love, by a wrong number that had led them all exactly where they needed to be. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what resonated with you most. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.